Hello everyone, Earl Henderson here, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. Today's video is going to be on survival food. When we look at survival food, or think about survival food, we need to think about the time frame involved. Are we only wanting a short-term amount of food, or are we going to need to be planning for long-term? Generally speaking, when we look at short-term survival food, our very bare minimum of a short amount of time that we need to have emergency food for is for a 72-hour window frame. You should have enough food on hand to last you for about 3 days. And that comes about from basically just historical events involving disasters and emergency situations. Tornadoes come through, hurricanes happen, whatever. Within about that 72-hour time frame is when some type of help is going to be coming your way and bringing on follow-on services, whether that be the police, they reach you within 72 hours, EMS, fire, search and rescue teams, National Guard, whatever. Generally speaking, within 72 hours, someone should be reaching you and giving you some type of help. You could be looking at maybe a few days to a few weeks of food that will last you for that short amount of time. I think probably the longest amount of time that you could stretch it and fit it into a short-term type of time frame would be maybe a month or two worth of food. I think once you start going past that 2-month mark, you're really starting to look into more long-term type of storage. When it comes to long-term storage, you're looking at several months to a year, or even more than a year, maybe even looking at 5 years worth of food set up. Or even in some cases, some people can have more than just 5 years. They may even have 10, 20, 30 years worth of food stored up. When we look at our food, we got two mains of thought when it comes to consumption. Food that is going to be ready to eat, and food that is going to require some type of preparation in order for you to eat it. Your ready to eat foods are going to be shelf foods like bags of chips, Spam, Vienna sausages, stuff like that, MREs, and even some of your canned foods, things like cans of fruit, something you can just open the can up and eat right out the can without having to heat it up or anything like that. Food that is going to require preparation of some sort is going to be your perishable type of foods, most of your canned foods, your stored foods like buckets of rice and flour, things of that nature, your freeze-dried foods, and live animals. Our ready-to-eat foods, this is going to be food that you don't have to do anything to it. You can just open the package and eat straight from the package. You don't have to warm it up, you don't have to cook it, you don't have to mess with it. You just eat it. The pros to that are you can eat on the go while you're walking to your destination, whether it be your bug out location or you're making it back home. You can be walking and eating at the same time, eating straight out the bag. So that makes it a whole lot more ideal for your mobility. You're not having to stop, start a fire, make some food, heat it up. You don't have to sit around and let it reconstitute or anything like that. You just eat and go. With some of your ready-to-eat foods, they're going to be higher in calories. For example, MREs. One MRE meal is going to be packed with a lot of calories. And you're going to have the ability to exert yourself a whole lot more when you're having a much higher calorie intake. So you can be walking for miles to get to your bug out location, or be getting back home because your vehicle's gone down, or a bridge has collapsed and there's just no way to drive around it. So you get a lot more energy out of it. And generally speaking, it is going to be a lot more lightweight. You can carry more little pouches of MREs and things of that nature that's going to last you, 3 days versus the amount of canned food it would take you to feed off of for 3 days. 3 days worth of canned food is going to be significantly heavier. Food that takes preparation, you got to do something to it before you eat it. The downside of this is it just takes time. And in survival scenarios, into the world, whatever's going on, you may not want to waste a whole lot of time, especially in the beginning stages. You're trying to get to your bug out location, get back home, whatever. You just don't want to sit around while all this crap's going down to eat. You want to be able to go. With food that takes preparation, it's going to take additional resources to prepare it. So if you need to boil water, well, what are you going to boil your water with? You're going to need a heat source of some sort. So you're at home, the power has gone out, you got an electric stove. Well, you're screwed when it comes to that electric stove unless you got a generator hooked up to the house. So they're going to have to rely on something else to be able to heat that water up. So you're going to have to either A, go to the grill that you got in the backyard, get it started, get your little backyard fire pit started up, or pull out your little camping stove and get it fired up to boil some water. You're going to have to do something extra to be able to get this food going. Even refrigeration. So your more perishable foods, you're going to need that stuff refrigerated. And if the power goes out, then it's not going to be lasting very long at that point. A lot of this food can be bulkier and heavier, as I alluded to earlier. A week's worth of food in cans is going to weigh a lot versus a week's worth of food that's in a bucket in the form of freeze-dried food. That freeze-dried food is going to weigh a lot less than the canned food. With your heavier weighing preparation required type of food, whether it be canned food or you got a bucket of flour, a bucket of rice or whatever, it's not going to be very easy for you to move that stuff around on foot for a long distance. You're going to require some mode of transportation. Our different types of food. We got perishable food, shelf food, military style rations, emergency rations, canned food, stored foods, freeze-dried food, and renewable food sources. Perishable food. This is going to be stuff that generally requires refrigeration. And with that, if the power goes out and you no longer have refrigeration, then a lot of this food is going to be going bad within a short amount of time. It could also just mean just general food that you buy at the grocery store. It's going to be going bad within some short amount of time, like a loaf of bread. A loaf of bread you buy at the store is not going to last you an entire year. It's going to go bad a lot sooner than that. Bananas, you go out and buy some bananas. You can't keep that stuff stored for a year. It's going to go bad within a shorter amount of time. And with that being said, your perishable food, since it has a much shorter life expectancy on it, you're either going to have to eat it or lose it. And if your power goes out and you have no other means to keep the food in the deep freezer cold so that it doesn't go bad, or keep your fridge cool enough so that food goes bad, you're going to need to get rid of that stuff. Because if you're going on a situation where the power is going to be out for days or weeks at a time, that refrigerator is not going to stay cold for any more than a couple days. And the food that's inside of it is going to start warming up and it's going to start spoiling. And if you got meat, if you got a deep freezer full of meat and you're going on a week plus of no power, all that meat in there, it's gonna get rank. It's gonna start stinking. So you're gonna have to take into consideration of one, eating as much as you can in the beginning of it, and enjoying what you can, or B, take it as a loss, and you're going to have to take that stuff, bag it up, and take it out of the house, because you do not want a whole deep freezer full of meat rotting inside your house. Not even out your back door. That stuff is going to stink like a dead body. Like you killed some people, and you got some people laying in your backyard. It is going to stink, and it's going to attract flies and other varmints and stuff like that, and mice. So if you got a freezer full of food, deep freezer full of food, and you have no means to keep that freezer on, no generator or anything like that, and it's looking like you're going to be going a week without any power, get you some trash bags, bag all that stuff up, and take it to the end of the road. And if you're in an urban environment, the end of your driveway or the front of your sidewalk or whatever is not going to be very far from your front yard. And so, in my opinion, you're going to want to move it even further away from that point, because just imagine you got a whole trash bag full of meat and you've got it in the trash can at the front of the yard, and the end of the yard is just, a few feet away from your front door. It's going to be stinking. So I would even advocate taking it down the road, take it into your block, take it to the local convenience store, gas station, whatever, and throw it in their dumpster. Let them deal with it. You want to get rid of that stuff. I did include in here that 50 pounds of dry ice can keep your freezer cold for 2 days. So power goes out and you got a deep freezer, and you're just not too comfortable with getting rid of that stuff just right yet. You want to hold on to that hope that the power will come back on. You can go down to the ice house, get you 50 pounds of dry ice, throw it in there, and it's going to keep it cool enough to where you're not going to have to throw all that stuff out within that first day or two. You can prolong it for a couple more days. The downside to that scenario or that train of thought is, if the power's out, will that ice house still be able to operate without power? Will they be able to do their complete their sales with a cash only system? Some places they're not set up very well to do a cash system. They rely heavily on point of sale systems and cash registers. But hopefully they got a receipt book and the ability to do that, and that could be an option for you. But that's, even if they do have that option, you might be living a little too far away from that location to be able to go down to it and get you 50 pounds of dry ice. Shelf food. This is going to be your convenience store type of food, the kind of food you want to get when you go on a road trip. Bags of chips, crackers, peanuts, granola bars, candy bars, cookies, popcorn, donuts, Twinkies, cereal, Spam, Vienna sausages, beef jerky, Slim Jims, tuna, things like that. This is going to be stuff that you open it and you start eating it. Is it going to be very nutritional for you? Is it going to be the most healthy thing for you? No, it's not, but it's going to keep you alive, and it's going to give you some calories. The good thing about this stuff is it does have a longer shelf life, so you can go buy a bag of beef jerky and it's gonna last a pretty good bit. Chips, same thing. Ramen noodles. Generally speaking, you might consider ramen noodles to fall under the food that requires preparation, because you gotta normally heat it up. But you can actually eat ramen noodles by themselves without having heated them up in water or anything. You basically open the package and start eating the noodles like a cracker. Military style rations. So you got U.S. military MREs, U.S. civilian MREs, rest of the world MREs. the things you want to consider when you are looking at MREs is factory versus secondhand. And with that comes your storage conditions. So if you are buying from a manufacturer who produces MREs for the military, they may also provide their civilian line of MREs for consumption. For example, one of the companies that produces U.S. military MREs is this, I don't know how to pronounce it, Paco. They make under contract U.S. military MREs. So does this company here, Miraqual or Miraquel. I don't know how you pronounce it. Never heard it pronounced. They produce MREs for the military under contract, but they also sell civilian MREs. So that Sapaco company actually makes a whole box of MREs that just regular people can go out and buy. When you buy from the manufacturer like that, or you're buying from a distributor who deals in emergency food preps or something like that, these places are going to have the more ideal storage conditions to house all that product. And so when you buy from them, you're buying a product that is probably a lot more fresh. It's probably been packaged at least within the last year, and it has been stored in ideal conditions. When you buy secondhand from some random person on eBay, you could be buying a box of MREs that was packaged a couple years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and you have no idea what their storage conditions have been like. For all you know, this person has stored their box of MREs that was packaged 2 years ago in a shed, and for 2 years it's been sitting in a shed in the backyard. In the summer months, the temperature inside that shed reached 100-something degrees for, a couple months, 3 months, 4 months in a row. When you subject MREs to those type of conditions, their shelf life significantly degrades. So things you want to think about before you buy MREs is how you're getting them. Are you buying straight from the manufacturer or a distributor, or are you buying them secondhand? And then you want to take those things to thought, because if you buy secondhand from some random person who's been storing MREs in a storage locker that's been reaching temperatures of 100-something degrees, you're not getting a product that's going to be lasting in your closet for a very long time, and it's not going to be tasting very good after quite good amount of time. Another maybe negative thing to MREs is their higher cost. So yes, MREs are going to cost a little bit more for a 3-day supply or for a 1-week supply versus something like canned food. You could probably buy triple, quadruple in canned food amount of time than you could what you would get MRE amount of time. Like, you could get a week's worth of canned food way a lot cheaper than you could a week's worth of food in the form of an MRE. But what you gain with the MRE is it is ready to eat right then and there. You tear open the package and you start eating. You don't have to do anything to it. You ain't got to cook or anything. Or all you got to do, if you want to, is warm it up. Talked about shelf life. Your shelf life is going to be dependent upon your storage conditions. And when we talk about shelf life, it's not always, it's been 5 years, this stuff can no longer be consumed. It's bad. Shelf life is more, can be more taste as well, or best if used by. So MRE manufacturers say that in 1 to 5 years is the best time to eat an MRE. That 5-year mark, as long as it's been stored right, it should taste the same as it was when it was cooked and packaged 5 years ago. When you get to the 10-year mark or 15-year mark on an MRE, again, depending on the storage conditions, even if you store it right, some things just might not taste as good as they could if you were to eat it within that 1 to 5 year time frame. Some of the things inside of it may become a little bit discolored. For example, the applesauce over time, it can discolor, and tests have been done on those things. And even though they discolor and they don't taste very good, some of the nutritional value is still there, but it's not like it's going to kill you if you eat it. Now you can take an MRE, put it in the trunk of a car out in the parking lot and keep it there for 5 years, and some of the stuff in there will be unhealthy for you to eat and could cause you problems. But as long as you keep it indoors in a cool, dry place, an MRE that was packaged in 1996 can still be good to eat. If not all of it, then at least some of it. U.S. military style rations. You got MREs, totems, first strike rations, long range patrol meal packets, meal cold weather, kosher and halal MREs, and you have vegetarian MREs. Really, I probably should have taken the kosher and halal and just sub-bulleted it under the MREs and added vegetarian as well. So your U.S. military rations, your MREs, look just like that. Comes in one big pouch. Totems, they look almost identical to this. Instead of being the brown package, it's more of a clear package, and it says totem down the front of it. Totem stands for Tailored Operational Training Meals, and they're almost virtually the same as an MRE. They just have a whole lot less calories. So MREs, this one MRE probably has something like 2,000 calories or more. And when you look at what calories a person needs throughout a day, just normal living conditions, an adult male needs, anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day to maintain weight. Not just survive, but also maintain weight. Military personnel or warriors in the middle of a war, they're doing a lot of physical activity. They're hiking for miles with a lot of equipment on their back. They're running, gunning. They're living a very strenuous lifestyle for that period of time. And for the initial phase of operations, of fighting and everything, MREs are a good option for them because they're packed in a lot of calories and they give them a lot of energy. When you are on a base here in the United States and you do a little 1 day training operation, or you do like a little weekend training thing, or maybe a week-long training thing, you're not doing a whole lot of physical stuff. You're not hiking for miles and miles with a big old heavy rucksack that's about half your weight or more. Then the MRE is overkill for those type of conditions, because you're basically just feeding a bunch of healthy dudes a bunch of calories that they don't need. So the totem was an answer to that. The totem has significantly less calories, but it's still designed much like an MRE. Tear open the big pouch and you got these little entrees inside, crackers, things like that. Your first strike rations are virtually the same as an MRE, but one pouch contains more calories than one MRE pouch does. And basically, in my opinion, a first strike ration is the military's answer to soldiers field stripping their MREs. Basically, field stripping an MRE is you can take like 5 of these different pouches right here, open them all up, take out the stuff you like, and condense it all into 2 pouches. And that's basically what a first strike ration is. One first strike ration pouch equals about 2 of these pouches. And it is more in gear for eating on the go, eating during the middle of an operation, Your long range patrol meal packets are going to be basically freeze-dried food, and it's going to be stuff that is supplied to the special operations community. So basically you get a little freeze-dried brick just like this. This is a product from Mountain House. This particular line of product is a government contract run that they make specifically for the Department of Defense that goes towards special operations. So this is what they give our Green Berets when they're out there in the field for weeks at a time and are literally walking everywhere on foot. You can carry a lot more food this way than you can just carrying a bunch of these. And when you are, excuse me, when you're out in the woods and you're hiking, ounces equal pounds and pounds equals pain. So this is the most ideal option for carrying a bunch of food for a longer length of time. It's going to be easier on the body. Your meal cold weather, again, it is just like an MRE as far as the pouch and everything goes, except it's all colored white so that you can use it in Arctic conditions. And the stuff on the inside is basically freeze-dried type of food items, so that if you left the meal cold weather package outside and it froze, well, it's still good. Whereas if you leave a regular MRE package outside and let it freeze, you could run into the problem of one of the entree pouches, one of the Mylar packages inside, bursting when it froze and expanded. With your kosher, halal, and your vegetarian MREs, those are just specialty MRE pouches that are made according to those person's dietary needs. The vegetarian MREs is, it's vegetarian, and the kosher and halal are just made for those religions. Your military, U.S. military style rations. So when it comes to the MREs, there's 24 different types of menus. And when I say menu, a pouch is a menu. So this one is menu 17, pork sausage patty, maple flavored. And it has a bunch of different little things in there, but that's like its main entree that's in there. When you get the U.S. military MREs, there's 2 boxes that they come in. Each box has 12 pouches in there. You got box A and box B. And box A will always have menus whatever, and box B will always have menus whatever. Over the years, the menu selections have changed. Right now, the current menu options, I don't know off the top of my head, but you go back to the year 2008, and menu number 18 is not what menu 18 is now. Now menu 18 could be something else. So there could be, you could hear stories from different family members who had to eat these things, years back, and they could say, "Oh, we had this; it was really good," and that might not even be anything that's offered anymore. They may have taken it off the menu. So, if you're wanting to have a pretty good idea of what the different menus are, or even look into the history of what all the different menus have been, you can go to mreinfo.com and get a whole lot more information on there. But with current U.S. military MRE productions, there's 24 different types of menus in there. Your first strike rations, there's 9. There's 8 long-range patrol menus, 12 cold weather, 12 totem. With the civilian MREs, there's probably, between all the different manufacturers, there's 24 plus different types of main menus. And the civilian menus, some of those could be things that just aren't offered in the military line of products. So you might be able to find a different company producing a civilian MRE that's going to have a heck of a better menu than what the military MRE would ever offer. Your rest of the world menus, you got Canada that has MREs, France, Germany, Japan, China, Russia. I mean, a bunch of different countries have MREs. And there's just way too many menus for me to be listing in this video. You can do your own research. If you want to have a pretty good idea of what some of these different MREs from across the world look like, go to Steve1989 MRE Info on YouTube. This guy has a phenomenal YouTube channel, and he does a tabletop video, much kind of like this, where he'll just take a MRE pouch, he'll rip it open, pull all the contents out, show you what they look like packaged, and then he'll put a food tray on the table and will dump out all the contents on the food tray to show you what they look like, and he'll go through and do a taste test. He'll eat it. So he's done, of course, the U.S. military rations. He's opened up Chinese rations, a Russian Spetsnaz mountain warfare ration, and it's really cool to look at what some of these other countries do for their troops and see what their food looks like. Some of them that I've watched, some of their menu options look pretty appetizing. They really do. I think it was maybe the Chinese. Their food options, they didn't look very good at all. It looked like life would be sucking if you had to rely on eating a bunch of Chinese military MREs. But the Russian, the Spetsnaz, I remember that one. It looked pretty decent. The Canadian ones looked okay. There was another one. I think it was the British MREs. They looked, some of those menus looked pretty good. This guy, he will also open up older packages. He's opened up U.S. military MREs from the 1980s, and those MREs that he got were stored in very ideal conditions, and they were still good. Most of them, most of the contents of them were still good, and he eats them. And he's even got old Vietnam and World War II rations, and we'll open them up, show you what they looked like when they were packaged way long ago. And even then, some of the Vietnam and World War II rations, some of the things out of those packages are still good, which of course Vietnam and World War II, they didn't have these little things. They mostly dealt with canned rations where they use cans and stuff. But just their field rations back then, it's kind of like a, I don't know what you call it, like a living museum in a way, where you get to see these things that people used so long ago and see what it looked like. So Steve1999 MRE Info is a really cool YouTube channel to go look at all kinds of military style rations from across the world. This is just a visual between what a regular MRE looks like and what a First Strike ration looks like. A First Strike ration, this right here is basically two of these. A visual comparison between a regular MRE and a cold weather MRE. Cold weather MREs look virtually the same, except they're white for use in Arctic conditions, and the stuff inside of it is mostly freeze-dried. A totem, again, same design and concept as an MRE, but it has a whole lot less calories in it. Emergency rations. These are going to be basically like your boat rations, and they're going to look like these guys right here. Basically, this Mylar package has a bunch of food bars in there. They're shaped like little candy bars, I guess you could say, and it's packed with a bunch of calories. So this whole thing right here is 2,400 calories all in all. Another cool thing about emergency rations is there's a few different companies that produce these, and one of them I was looking at, they actually produce rations for cats and dogs, which that's a pretty interesting concept, because if you have pets, what are you doing for their survival food needs? if you look at animal or pet food that you get from the store, let's say you get canned dog food. If you look on the best if used by date, it has a significantly shorter period of time on it than what's listed on human products. Your dry food, it's going to have a shorter span of time on it as far as how long you can store it. So if you're looking for food for your dog to last, say you want 6 months worth of food for your dog, well, there's an option to have survival food that can have a 5-year shelf life on it. You buy this stuff 5 years down the road, it's still good to go. But probably what you could do is go into a rotation type of basis. You could keep a large quantity of, we'll say you feed your dog dry food, the cereal stuff. When you go to the store to buy a bag of dog food, you could buy an additional 2 bags and put them in a large trash can that you've bought specifically just to store those things in. It's never been used for trash or anything. Store them in there, and as you deplete your normal bag of dog food for the month, you can go buy another bag, and then when you start getting to that 1 year mark, as you deplete your normal everyday bag, you can go into that can or that storage box that you got and pull out the bags from it, and then put an additional 2 extra bags in that thing for them to last for another year or two while you go out and buy regular bags of dog food throughout the year. So you can kind of keep a rotation basis in there and replace them every year or so. That way, when it comes down to it, you at least got a couple bags, 4 bags, however many bags you want to keep on hand of dog food to be able to use in an emergency. And so that's however long of a storage term of food you're going to need is obviously going to be dictated by your storage space and how much of that you can store at one time. Because bags of dog food, pretty big, and depending on the size of your dog and how many dogs you got, those bags of dog food can be gone through pretty quickly. The other thing, I guess, to talk about these things. So this one is a apple cinnamon flavor. If all you buy is a bunch of these boat rations, you're going to get pretty sick and tired of eating these things over any certain period of time. I certainly could not imagine eating this thing for a month straight. Like, you would get pretty sick and tired of it. And that goes with any of your other food options as well. You want some options there when it comes to eating. And for this stuff, this is a decent supplement to your survival food, but I wouldn't say that it would be a good idea to have 3 months of emergency rations in your food stores just for you to be eating on for 3 months. You're going to go crazy over it. Canned food. Canned food is food that not only can you store for emergency purposes, but it's also going to be just regular food that you eat throughout the year during normal day-to-day life. When it comes to canned food, it's either going to be store-bought or self-canned. If you're into cannery, if you're into canning, you already know probably a lot more than I do about canning, and I'm not going to tell you anything more than what you don't already know. For those who don't do their own canning, the thing to probably think about with canned food is it can be a time-intensive type of ordeal. It's going to preparing the food and getting everything together and canning it and going out and buying all the cans or the jars and doing that whole process and packing them up, whatever. That's time consuming. And it's also, if you're going to be first brand new getting into it, there's going to be a learning curve there, so you have to figure it out yourself. So if that's something that you want to get into, you're going to need to seek out knowledge from somewhere else. on how to start doing your own canning. It's not something I've gotten into. I just go the store-bought route. But when it comes to canned food, you have a fresh shelf life of around about 5 years or so. So, for example, this can of beans right here, on the bottom of this can, it says best if used by July 28, 2021. It doesn't mean that come July 2021, these beans are no longer going to be safe to eat or anything like that. Excuse me. It just means that the taste is not going to be as, or could not be as good as if you were to eat it before that date. This can of beans right here, even though it says best if used by 2021, you store it in the ideal conditions. You can open this thing up in the year 2025, probably even 2030, and it's still going to be safe to eat. It just might not taste as good as if you ate it within that 1 to 5 year mark. The same thing is going to apply with your MREs and stuff like that. So when it comes to the expiration date that's on the bottom, yes, you can still eat this stuff after the expiration date, or the best if used by date. You can also get cans of freeze-dried food. Mountain House, for example, will make big old like coffee can sized cans of dry food, and that size of serving is good for a family. Like you can get like a whole coffee can size of sausage, patties or something like that, and take all the patties out, reconstitute them, and you've got a big old hearty breakfast for your whole family. So you got multiple servings in there. So you can buy that stuff by the can and store it up in your basement, whatever. Have lots of food that way. When it does come to storing cans for survival needs, you can do a rotation. So when you go to the grocery store, for the week, and you've already thought about the meals you're going to be cooking or whatever, and you're like, you know what, I'm probably going to need 2 cans of green beans. Okay, well, go ahead and buy those 2 cans of green beans that you're going to use that week, but also go ahead and buy an additional 2 cans. And those additional 2 cans you're going to put away for emergency use. Keeping in mind what their best by date is. So you know that the canned food that you got over here is its best if used by date is going to be somewhere between the years of 2020 and 2022. Okay, well, let's just say at time of recording right now, it is February 26, 2020. So I know this is going to be best if used by 2021. So when it comes to about this time next year, what I would want to do is go ahead and take this out of my emergency reserve and throw it in my normal pantry that I'm going to be cooking with, throughout the week or whatever. And I'm just going to buy another can of green beans to replace what I took out of my emergency pantry. That way I'll have an additional 5 years of, best if used by green beans. So you can rotate that stuff out over the years. That way you're maintaining a stockpile of food that has some longevity to it. Once you start reaching, the dates that it needs to be used, you can go ahead and start pulling it off the shelf, consume it, but just replace your emergency shelf with what you took out. Do-it-yourself stored foods. So you can store things like wheat, grains, flour, rice, noodles, beans, cornmeal, salt, sugar, etc. You can get food grade 5-gallon buckets, get some large Mylar bags, and go to the store and buy you a bunch of flour, pour it into that Mylar bag, seal the Mylar bag with either a specialty heat sealer made specifically for Mylar bags, or you can even use an ironing device like you iron your clothes with. You just lay down like a little 2x4 over the top of the bucket, lay the Mylar over top of it, and then just run the iron over the seals, and you'll seal that bag up, no problem. And of course, put an oxygen absorber in there before you do that, and put the lid on that bucket, and you can have a bucket of rice that is good for 25 years. So you could make several different buckets of grain, flour, rice, beans, stuff like that, put it in your basement, and it's going to last, it's going to be good for 25 years. And even stuff like that can also be set up on a rotation basis. So let's say that you know, you can't, or not canned, but you put up a bucket of rice in the year 2010. Well, here it is, 2020. If you wanted to, you could go ahead and take that 2010 bucket out of your emergency store, put it in your normal pantry that you're going to be using, you know, throughout the year, and just create a whole new bucket, put it back in your emergency store, and you keep that rotation of food that's going to be lasting a pretty long time. That way, you know, if you canned something 20 years ago, or stored something 20 years ago, disaster that happens, you know, on the clock or on the dot 20 years later, well, you only got about 5 years of that food that's going to be best if used by, or its shelf life on there. So, you know, you can always keep up that 10-year rotation where you're always maintaining a good stock of long-term storage of this type of food that you could put in buckets. There's when it comes to the buckets, you will need food grade ingredient buckets. You shouldn't be using any other type of bucket to put food in. And you get these buckets, you get the Mylar bags. The Mylar bags, they're not really all that expensive. You can get a bunch of oxygen absorbers, and it's a pretty simple, easy do-it-yourself option. There's even some specialty lids that you can buy for those food buckets that just make opening and closing them a lot easier. If you've never opened up a food bucket before, the big old sealed lid that they put on there, you have to get this like, or you can get this like this little specialty plastic wrench thing to kind of like pop it off. If you don't have that thing, it can take a little bit longer to get that lid off, but there is a more specialty lid that you can buy that's basically a twist cap kind of contraption to make getting in and out of that bucket a lot easier. But this is, like I said, a pretty easy do-it-yourself method for storing these types of foods. Freeze-dried foods, you're going to get 25 plus years out of storage on freeze-dried foods. There are companies that I have listed on here, and they make buckets, like these stackable buckets that you could put a bunch of little pouches of freeze-dried food like this. Mountain House, you can of course buy the little individual packets of food, or they even offer a large plastic bucket that is full of multiple of these little packets. And these companies will do the same thing. They'll have these buckets that are filled with individual pouches, and the time frame is scalable, so you can have a 3-day supply of freeze-dried food. You could have a month long of freeze-dried food. You could have 3 months supply of freeze-dried food. You can even have a year's worth that you can buy from these companies. You go to their website, you can click 1 year's worth of freeze-dried food, and then it'll be delivered to you. They come in stackable buckets, easy to store, pretty easy to use. The packages they come in, you know, you can be a single serve package, or you can get like a little family sized kind of package that has some additional serving sizes in there. You can also do it yourself freeze dry. So there's I want to say there's maybe only 1 or 2 companies out there that actually sell freeze drying machines to just, regular people. That would be like a normal size appliance that you could fit in your kitchen. The industrial grade freeze dryers are freaking huge, and you're not going to fit that thing in your kitchen, but you can buy a at-home type of application that you could very easily sit inside your kitchen or just sit it out in the garage or something like that and freeze dry your own food. So you could do things like you could go cook a big old pot of beef stroganoff, or you could go to the store and get some ham, get chicken, whatever, and get other stuff like cheesy potatoes and cook it and prepare these things, put them on the little trays, stick them inside the freeze dryer, and the freeze dryer thing takes probably about a day for it to get rid of all the water in the food. And when you take it out of the freeze dryer and you put it in a container, like a jar, or another like a Mylar bag, you could cook some beef stroganoff today, freeze dry it, put it in a Mylar bag, and it's going to be good in the shelf for 25 years. 25 years after you cook that stuff and put it in the freeze dryer, you could take it out of the shelf, pour some water in it, reconstitute it, and it's going to taste the same as it did when you cooked it 25 years ago. Excuse me, sorry. The only downside to this is the expense of the machine itself. It's not like a little $100 machine. It's going to be a couple grand to buy this. But the pro to that is you can buy a lot of food at the grocery store in bulk. Like they got a sale going on for meat of some sort or whatever. You can go buy a bunch of that meat, freeze dry it, and that stuff is good for 25 years. You just put it in a Mylar bag or put it in a jar, put it in the shelf, and you don't have to refrigerate it or anything. And 25 years later, it's still good to go. If you want to learn a little bit more about freeze drying and look at some different foods that have been freeze dried and just see what it looks like, see what the process is, the science behind it and everything, there's a YouTube channel called The King of Random, and they've got actually quite a few videos on there where they freeze dry different foods. They'll even go through and freeze dry candy. Like they'll throw Skittles into the freeze dryer, and I've seen them do it in video, and I've seen some other people do it in videos, and based off their reactions and some of the things they say, the freeze drying Skittles makes it taste better than just the Skittles as you would buy at the store. It's just the way that that process works. It just makes it, to them, it sounds like it's better than the original. So it is a pretty cool science. You can go check out The King of Random on YouTube and look at some of their freeze drying videos. This is an image of a bucket that you could get, and inside this bucket would be a bunch of these little pouches. And the way this bucket's designed is you could stack one or two more buckets on top of it. So you got a basement or something, you can stack against your wall, 2 buckets high against that whole back wall and have a lot of food on store down in your basement. This is just another image of what a bucket could look like. This one looks more like a 5-gallon bucket, but the same concept, has a bunch of little Mylar packages in there, and it can be stacked as well. This one happens to have a screw top, kind of a lid to make getting into it easier. Renewable food sources. So at some point, if you were planning for a long-term food storage, you're going to be limited in how much you can store based off the space that you have, and really probably even before that, I would say would be money. Can you afford to have 5 years worth of emergency food stored? And do you have the money to even create the correct storage for that? Do you even have enough storage in your existing house to store all that stuff? Or are you going to have to build something else to keep it all in and then keep that temperature controlled based off what it is you're storing? If you've ever watched National Geographic's Doomsday Preppers, there are a few people out there with the money to be able to have a really good setup. However, the majority of the people out here just don't have that type of money to have those type of setups. And so you're going to have to look at your realistic goals here. If you got the money to have 10 years worth of emergency food stored somewhere, then great. That's wonderful. I'm happy for you. But the fact of the matter is, there's a crap ton of people who just cannot afford that. So there are a lot of people, you may be able to stretch it and keep about a year's worth of food on hand. You might be able to go out and buy at once 1 year's worth of food in the freeze-dried options. And that's good, but what if something lasts for a year longer? So what are your even more long-term goals? What are your plans for that? And some of these obviously can be within your short-term goal as well. You have a garden, so a garden is a pretty cool thing to have. You can reduce some of your costs when you go to the grocery store. You don't have to buy tomatoes when you go to the grocery store because you got tomatoes in your backyard. Things like that. When you get into very long-term food needs, these are the things that's going to keep on going and going and going because it's been going on for millions of years. Agriculture, gardening, wild plants, livestock, wild game. Deer are going to be living for hundreds of years past today's date, 2020. As long as we don't hunt them out into extinction or some extinction level event occurs, deer are going to be around for a long time. And so if, quote unquote, the world ended tomorrow and you got 1 year's worth of emergency food in your storage, you come up on that 1 year mark, what are you going to be eating after that? This is where hunting comes into play, creating your own garden, knowing what wild plants you cannot eat, keeping chickens and stuff in your backyard, raising rabbits, things of that nature, raising pigs, cattle. That's going to be a really good long-term option. Unless we're talking about nuclear fallout and you need to be in a bunker, then tending to a bunch of cattle out on a cattle farm is going to be the best route for you dealing with nuclear. But aside from all that, these are probably your best long-term goals. Depending on the age and activity levels, adult males need between 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day, not just to survive, but to thrive. That is to maintain their weight. And adult females are going to need between 1,600 to 2,400 calories a day. And this is also going to be including your teenagers, 13 and up. So a 15-year-old male, may require the same, if not more calories than a 24-year-old male. You can eat a lot less than these recommended calories and still sustain life, but you're not going to be maintaining your weight. So if you're an adult male, 18 years old, and you're only eating 1,000 calories a day, you're going to start losing weight. You'll still be alive, but you're going to be losing weight. So when you get into some of your long-term food storage options and based off the calories that's in these things and whatnot, you may have to take those things into consideration to make sure that you have the enough calories to not just survive, but to maintain your weight so that you don't start degrading over time. Children 4 to 12 years old need roughly between 12 to 2,000 calories a day. That's because they're a little bit smaller. Infants to 3 years old need about 1,000 calories a day. All the food that we've talked about so far are going to be suffice for children and up. If you got teeth to chew this stuff, you're good to go. Infants, they're going to require something a little bit different than, MREs. Infants are going to need their mom, or they're going to need some powdered formula. And if something happens to mom and she dies, or something medically happens to her and she's not able to produce milk, you're going to need powdered formula. So you're going to have to take into consideration how much powdered formula you're going to need to last for a whole year, to last for 2 years. But the best thing for a baby is mama. That's been working pretty darn good for the last several thousand years, and I don't see that ending anytime soon. When we talk about survival food, one thing I do not see mentioned a whole lot is water. So food is great. I love food. Food is what has caused the human race to evolve to what it is. It's what made our brains bigger and made us smarter and more evolved. It's what has caused us to evolve and be better than the other primates. But you can survive 3 weeks without food. You cannot survive very long without water. At most, 3 days is how long you can survive without water. And that's really depending on the conditions. If it's extremely hot conditions outside and you're exerting a lot of energy and physical exertion, you can probably go ahead and drop that down to a couple days or a day. Water is crucial. At minimum, you need 2 quarts of drinking water per day to sustain life. 2 quarts. That's 2 canteens of water. 2 U.S. military canteens of water to survive, just to keep yourself alive. We use water for more than just drinking, obviously. If you start getting into the freeze-dried food, you're going to need water to reconstitute this food to make it more enjoyable, more edible. Yeah, sure, you could eat this stuff right out the package like it's a cracker. It's going to be really crunchy. But even then, drinking all that, you're still going to need water to consume, because you're eating stuff that's going to be dehydrating you. So ideally, you need about a half gallon of drinking water per day. And there are some sources that say that you should be drinking at a minimum a gallon of water a day for health reasons. When you look at cooking, like I said, reconstituting your freeze-dried food, or you're doing actual real deal cooking, got stuff on the stove, cooking, sanitation for cleaning yourself, cleaning your booty, cleaning your food dishes and utensils, stuff like that, that increases your daily water needs. It's estimated that people use about 13 gallons of water a day per person. Now, this is going to be in areas where water is obviously more abundant. And when you think about the amount of water that you probably use a day, a lot of that water is probably a little bit wasteful. Like your toilet, every time you flush that toilet, I figure the numbers on it, but you're flushing down a lot of good drinking water. And you probably think drinking water, what do you mean drinking water? The water that the water line that goes into your toilet is feeding off the water line that goes to your sink and into your shower and everything. The main line that comes to your house is coming from your public utility. It's all good drinking water. So when you flush that toilet, so many times a day, you're flushing X amount of good drinking water down the toilet. Taking a shower, when you think about taking a shower, the water that comes out as you are showering, how much of that is truly being wasted while you're sitting there with the shampoo, scrubbing your head and lathering up and scrubbing all over your body. That water's still flowing, and it's mostly being wasted at that point. And then after you've scrubbed your head and you scrubbed your body, then you rinse yourself off. Well, for that whole time that you've been scrubbing, water's been flowing and going down the drain. Same with brushing your teeth. Let's say you're sitting right there in front of the sink, you turn it on, water's running while you're brushing your teeth. That water that's flowing is being wasted. So in those regards, you could say that your actual needed gallons of water per day could be a little bit lower. And it's day to day can change. So, but you are going to be using quite a bit of water per day at just bare minimum needs. And this is also where harvesting rainwater can come into play, and that is a pretty big popular thing out there, is collecting rainwater and utilizing it for things like flushing the toilet. There are people out there who have their gutters run off into a big large 55-gallon drum, and it's just full of rainwater, and they have it set up to where the water line comes off that barrel and goes to the toilet. And when they flush their toilet, they're just using rainwater to flush the toilet. They're not using water coming into the house that goes to their sink that they use for drinking and cooking. So it's a more wiseful way of using water. If you want to get more information about harvesting rainwater, there is a plethora of YouTube videos and articles on the internet that you can find, many different sources out there, and trying to figure out different ideas on harvesting rainwater. When we think about the amount of water that you need at bare minimum per day, you need to take that into consideration for how long you need your survival stores for. So if you got 3 days worth of food, well, you need 3 days worth of water. If you have a week's worth of food, then you need a week's worth of water. You can get gallon jugs of water. These, just like you get a gallon of milk, you can go to the store, get a gallon jug of water. You can get cases of water or cases of bottled water, and those are good options for storing water. You can take a couple cases of bottled water and stick them in your closet, and they're going to be good years down the road. You can get specialty made water containers that are stackable. Of course, you can get into rain harvesting and set up a filtration and purification system for that. And then also, in general, just having water filtration and purification equipment. Say you live near a body of water like a river or something, and so long as whatever natural disasters occurred hasn't contaminated that water source with stuff that you can't remove, that may be your water source. If you live in a more rural area, you may have a pretty good water source out there. You may even have a well on your property that you can get water out of. Here's an image of some different options for water storage. You can get these little stackable bricks that you fill full of water, and you can stack these however many high. You can actually turn these in different directions and basically make a large cube-shaped stack of these things right here. These back here are stackable options. These just look like fuel cans essentially, but they are food grade cans that are made to fill full of water. You can take bottled water. You can go out and buy the gallon water that I talked about, and you can fill these containers up with bottled water or gallon water that you buy at the store, and stack these up in these 5-gallon containers, or even larger gallon size container, and keep it for extremely long amount of time. Which people always bring up bottled water and a shelf life or an expiration date. There for a while, bottled water came with an expiration date on there, and that was basically just because of the food industry and some states having a requirement that an expiration date needs to be on anything that's consumed by humans. So a bottle of water that you go buy at the store, you put that in your closet, yeah, it's going to be good to drink 20 years down the road. Now, the issue with the plastic that bottled water is stored in, that plastic is a lot different than this kind of plastic. And so after a while, if you keep a bottle of water in the garage or whatever, the taste of that water may be a little bit off, just based off that plastic that it's stored in. But these food grade plastic jugs, you take that bottled water, pour it in there, fill it all the way up to the cap it off, and it's gonna taste good 20 years later, no problem. This is just another image of those stackable water containers. Another image of stackable water containers, depending on the camera and what it's able to pick up. So this is 1 container, 2 container, 3 container, 4 container, 5 container. So you got 10 containers on the bottom and 10 containers on top. I don't know how many gallons these hold, but I mean that's quite a bit of water right there that you could easily put in the corner of your basement, corner of your garage, or just spread them out in the closets in your house. You can also buy packaged drinking water. You can get these little Capri Sun type of pouches. There's little Mylar bags that's full of water, or you can buy actual canned water, like a can that you would get a soft drink in, or you can buy like a almost like a food can kind of shape, a little bit taller, that's full of water. Price wise, these are from what I could find on pricing wise, are going to be a lot cheaper than your canned options. The downside is to these, if you get a bunch of these, weight wise, they're not going to stack and store as easily as cases of canned water. So if you've ever been in like a warehouse or something like that, even at the grocery store, and you look at all the canned drinks that they have, you can stack canned drinks pretty high, at a pretty good height, and have a bunch of them stacked. And I mean, they bear their weight pretty good. Cardboard boxes full of this. Water, once you start, adding a lot of water, it starts to weigh a lot. It gets pretty heavy. And so if you have a bunch of boxes of this weight in cardboard, it may not stack very well. The cardboard may start to collapse and fall down. So you might have to look into shelving options that you put these boxes in, these pouches come in just for better storage. But the canned water, when you get cases of it, I mean, you can get a whole case of this to fit on a pallet, and a pallet could be like 5 feet high or something like that. You can have 5 foot high of canned water. The downside to that is once you start getting into that quantity, or even just dealing with the canned water, it's a lot more expensive than the pouch water. I think on Amazon you can get like, I may be a little bit off on this, but I want to say I saw something like 60 pouches of water for something like 30 bucks, 38 bucks maybe. Whereas cases of this were super expensive. And there's a few different manufacturers, so I don't know specifically pricing for this manufacturer, but I remember looking at some canned water, and I want to say that I saw pricing of like $50 for like a 24 pack of water, and that was just super expensive looking to me versus this. But like I said, storage wise, this is going to store a lot easier. You can stack a bunch of these easier and safer than you could stacking a bunch of whole cardboard boxes of these things, and these things will get heavy when you start adding a lot to it. That is the last of my presentation for survival food. Not much else to say on the food. If you have any questions, comments, or even suggestions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section. Go ahead and send me a message. This video is going to be shared to my Facebook page, so you can also go there and leave comments or send messages. As it is right now, Facebook, I do respond a lot quicker on the Facebook platform than I do the YouTube platform. It's just that I'm always on Facebook a lot more than I am YouTube. But leave me a message or a comment on either one of those, and I will respond to you. If you like this content, stay tuned for another video that I'm going to be doing on field stripping MREs. I talked about that in this video, and the next video that I do in this series of food videos is going to be field stripping MREs, and then also showing you more of the contents of what's inside MREs. This is Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.